words of all great millennials, OMG, hashtag thank you for showing up, because I really thought there was going to be a couple of people. This is my first TMRE event. As the sort of introductory slide shows, I'm here to talk as an expert on VUCA, Agile, and Millennials. So I'll just give you my credentials as to why I think I'm a super expert on all these three. Number one, I'll start with Millennial. I'm 22 and a half. For those of you who didn't laugh, thank you. For those of you who did, we'll talk later. No, I'm actually 43 years old. I'll start with a little bit of intro about myself to give you some perspective on where my sort of life started. I was born in Iran. We escaped in 1979. It depends on if you listen to my dad's version of the story or my mom's. My dad's is like a Bruce Willis, Die Hard 55 version sort of the story. My mom's is more like a Jake Gyllenhaal independent film version of the story. So I'll tell you a combined version of events. But we escaped with a drug smuggler who usually used to smuggle drugs across Iran to Afghanistan. And when the revolution happened, he found a lucrative business in smuggling people. So I was 8 at the time. My brother was 5. And we left. We went to Pakistan until we managed to get into Dubai. And the reason we were heading to Dubai was that my grandfather was on a business trip there. And he was the only one we knew outside of Iran. So we got from one Muslim country to another at a time of religious persecution. So it was still a volatile moment for us. It took 6 years of us being in Dubai before Canada let us in as landed immigrants. So we immigrated to Canada in Vancouver, British Columbia in 1986. I went to university there, got my degree in education. I'm actually, by profession, a teacher. 5- and 6-year-olds are my specialty. A lot of people ask me, how did I move to HR? Super easy, transferable skills. We just deal with bigger 5-year-olds. So I got my teaching degree. Canada is the one country, by the way, in the world that doesn't need teachers. So there was no job. I moved to the UK, went to London, and taught in the inner city schools in the UK. Learned a lot. There's probably most of the lessons in life that I still apply daily, I learned from 5-year-olds. And studied there, took a sabbatical. I needed it. It was an inner city school. Took 6 months break, went to the US, got married in LA, and ended up staying there. But in the US, they're like, oh, Canadian education degree, no, you got to go back to school. I'm like, are you serious? No. So I decided to stop teaching and take a job in a small company, 20 employees, and they hired me as their HR manager. I didn't even know what HR stood for. So luckily, Google was around, and I started to teach myself. Worked there for a few years at ADI Health Group. And then a recruiter hired me for Tesco's Fresh and Easy business in the US, a startup in 2006. They hired me as an employee relations analyst, which again, I had to Google to find out what it was. The only reason, by the way, they hired me was because I'd spent 10 years in the UK, and they were like, all these, because Tesco's a UK-based supermarket chain, so all these Brits are going to come over to the US to set up shop. And they were like, we need someone who gets UK culture. Irrelevant of what job we give her, just bring her over. And that's how it started. And then because it was a startup, and Tesco fundamentally believes in giving people a shot, they have this philosophy of will versus skill. I started as an analyst writing a handbook, and I grew from 2006, where I started with Tesco, until now to take on this role. So poster child for growth and development in a company right here. So in 2012, they sold Fresh and Easy, and they moved me to Prague, Czech Republic, to head up HR there. And then soon after, I got the Central Europe and then the international role. The point that I'm trying to make is that my life, both personal and professional, has been riddled with travel in very different places. And one of the things as a human being that you do as a survival skill is wherever you're ending up in your life, you try to find a commonality, something that is similar in order to latch onto. And so that's become almost like a daily habit for me, where I look for something that's similar. And I wanted to share that learning in this current marketplace, which is probably 10 times more volatile than my life story. So that's basically me. This VUCA, hands up how many of you had heard of this buzzword that's going around? Yeah. It's not pretty. One of the things, I mean, this is how they're describing the marketplace now, but one of the most interesting things about this when it first started to pop up was English is like my third language, so forgive me, I was kind of like, what's the real difference between uncertain and ambiguous? I mean, you know when sometimes you're just like, why doesn't the language just simplify itself? Why does it have to be so many different words for the same thing? And the more I started to think about it, is actually there is something really uniquely cool about that difference. Uncertain is when you've got a black and white option, yeah, and you don't know which way to go. You've narrowed your choices down, yeah? Ambiguous is when nothing is clear, yeah? It's that ski day when you're going down the ski slope and it's just clouds. And you're like, I could be off the ski slope at any minute. So the fact that they've put both of these market experts into this word is really interesting. How many of you know where this word even came from? Hands up. It came from the US military, late 1980s, early 90s. So this is just me being a visual storyteller, okay? This is how I picture this word coming up. So the head of the military goes into the president's office and says, okay, we got a situation. I bet that's the first line that comes out of the military at any particular time. And the president's like, what now? And he's like, we've got this VUCA situation. And obviously he's like, what do you mean? Well, with the new enemy being terrorism, we don't know where they're going to pop up anymore, yeah? Before, the enemy used to have a geographical sort of place, a location, but now they're random. We can't predict it. And the president's response probably was something along the lines of, so what are you going to do about it? He goes, well, there's two things that the military said in response to this we need to do. One, imagine this sentence coming out of the head of the military to the president, okay? You need to give up some of your power. And the second one was that we need to actually have bases and places that we never really thought we would need bases. So the military's response to VUCA, which they coined as a response to terrorism, this enemy, or quote unquote, the military's ultimate customer, was the top has to relinquish some power, and the power needs to now, in decision making, go to the local bases, because they're the ones closest to knowing what the terrorists are going to be doing, whether the cells are popping up or not. And then the second thing was that you need to actually expand your knowledge base beyond areas that you typically or historically thought were areas that you needed to focus. So of course we're going to have a base in Syria and pretty much any other country in the Middle East, but I think you need to increase your sort of strength and support and presence in countries that are not necessarily associated with the rise of terrorism, i.e. Paris, Belgium. So that was where VUCA originated. In 2008, when the economy crashed and the face of the customer, as you know it, for companies started to change, we had no idea whether they were going online, whether they were shopping at the store, what was making them change their behavior. VUCA then became a term that was used by organizations. So, from the magazine that was just pitched, here's some lovely statistics to make you feel amazing about what this market's doing to your employees. Basically, it's absolutely turned organizations on its head. And I'll give you an example of me, both as an employee and as a customer. You guys, no joke, I'm supposed to know this stuff. 4 weeks ago, I'm sitting behind my computer. I go online. I was supposed to buy 4 things, yeah? I had 4 items on my shopping list. I bought 2 online, and 2 I saved to go to the store to get. I could have bought all 4 online. I could have bought all 4 from the same store. So as I'm packing my stuff to go from my house to the store, in my head, I'm like, why did I just do this? Because I was feeling all of a sudden lazy. I was like, I should have just ordered all 4 online. And then I started to ask, like, wait, why did I do this? And then I started to probe and ask questions. I genuinely had no idea why I chose those specific items online. So my question to you, whether you're suppliers or part of a company, is if I, as a customer, have no idea what the hell I'm doing, how in God's name are you guys going to be able to find out what's going on in my head? And the answer to that question will ultimately be, and I'll get back to this, between getting to understand why I've changed behaviors, which is far more than just the analytics coming out of my club card or shopping habits online. Now the reason, and I don't know whether this is 100% or not, that I did what I did was that recently my job changed. So I work from home or hotel rooms because I travel so much. So subconsciously, because this was not a conscious thing, I picked 2 items random to go pick up at the store, because if I didn't do that, the chances of me leaving the house for the whole week would become next to 0. In order for you guys to be able to predict why the heck I did that, you need to actually understand, where do I work? How do I work? How many hours do I spend at work? How many hours do I spend on a plane, etc.? And that's the sort of research, behavioral research, that's key. So, what the military did in a nutshell is turn the response to terrorism into an agile one. And this is another buzzword that's coming out in companies and organizations. How do you become more agile? And look, I found this on Google Images. Look, there's a ton of stuff out there about agile. It started from the whole IT boom and how they work. And now it's being applied to HR as an organizational design for agility. But in a nutshell, if you want to just remember it in the simplest terms, it's about getting your big chiefs to relinquish decision-making powers to the front lines. Yeah? That's all it is. It doesn't mean that they're not a big chief anymore, although that's the first thing they're going to go to, and your HR teams will have to, manage the egos there. But to be perfectly honest with you, it means that they are sitting at the center, and this is the kind of visual I have. So imagine I'm the big chief, and I just shout out, hey, store number 6, what do you need? I need 6 of these, 4 of these, and 10 of that, pronto. All right, I'm sending it over. You become an almighty coordinator of resource, money, whether that's people, money, finances, and you provide. You become the ultimate service leader, which is another phrase that's going to be popping up around HR areas and arenas, coupled with marketing. You're going to hear Mr. Mackey speak on Friday. I hope you guys catch it. I saw the clips of conscious capitalism from his San Francisco piece, and that's, again, centered about how to change leadership into a much more conscious or service-led approach. So this is it. The CEO becomes the enterprise coordinator. He doesn't have the insight anymore because it's not centrally controlled. This is from Institute for the Future. If you haven't heard of this organization, they're up in NorCal. Fantastic work done by Bob Johansen, who took VUCA and then created what the leadership skills will be for the future in order to be able to drive this. So check him out, his company, if you want to understand more. He does like 10-year predictability analysis for companies as to what to do. Fantastic work they're doing there. Again, my focus here is to tell you in the simplest terms because, you know, I'm not really 20 years HR. I learned HR as I went along, and I don't really like HR fluff. I have an allergic reaction to fluffy hand-holding situations that HR has become stereotypically known for. So I like to keep it simple, and if I was to say that the common theme, again, going back to my background, having changed from city to city, I work in so many different countries, the common theme, if I was just to tell you, the one thing that in this market that's so volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, the one thing that hasn't changed coming to work is this service element. And I'm not talking about just customer service. I'm talking being in service to the teams at the front lines, because they're the one who actually know why I'm not shopping all 4 items at the store. Future. This is from Cisco. Here's some fun facts. It's all centered around social media. So if you're not tapping into the conversations that are happening between colleagues and customers, you're missing out on a key element. The millennials, it's one of those stereotypes that you know, they've got a short attention span. They only read 140 characters. They're all on social media. I never see their eyes because they're always looking down. Whatever you want to call that, you need to get to understand it and also know that the actual marketing conversations that are happening on social with the customer and the employees, and they're probably going to be using hashtags. They're going to be using acronyms. They're going to be using abbreviations. So whether you're 25, 35, 45, you've got to get on the bus with this. The statistics and the research are showing that there is no other way that conversations happen. You can put Brad Pitt, George Clooney, and Mel Gibson selling Nespresso, yeah? It'll capture the attention of someone walking by the television set, but the actual conversation pulling customers in is happening at the front lines. So if your colleagues are writing anything negative, or the employees are writing anything negative, that is what's going to get heard first. Your commercial isn't going to entice anyone in. Again, some statistics from Success Factors. Again, another great resource for millennials. I'm running short on time, so I'm going to skip to this slide here. And the reason for that, the slides, by the way, are all available. Don't worry if you need them. I can even send them to you. Simon Sinek, hands up, how many of you guys have heard of this guy? Cool. Highly recommend you guys go online and watch his video, Why Leaders Eat Last. What he does is he breaks down the entire organization, like a human body, into 5 chemicals, yeah? And this is really good for you if you've got operators or clients who, when you say the word culture or, you know, millennials, they're all like, go away, I don't want to talk about it. You know, the fluff radar goes up and they're like, yeah, get out. But human behavior and chemicals in the human body, he associates that with an organization. And basically, the 5 chemicals he talks about are serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, oxytocin, and cortisol, yeah? I won't go into detail because I will not do it justice. It's his talk, go watch it. But ultimately, the one thing, aside from coordinating the sort of response to what the frontline teams need to be able to survive in this sort of millennial situation, whether the survival is because of what the market is doing, or whether the survival is because I don't understand the millennial walking into my company, they're taking over, I'm scared, What do they want next? For me to wear a hoodie and a converge to work? All of those things that are going into your head, however which way this market is impacting you and your clients, the one thing that I can urge analysts, market researchers is that you need to pretty much eradicate all the sort of filing cabinet of perceptions that you have about customer behavior and park it for a bit and really go in with a blank sheet of paper to be in service with what is going on. Again, if I couldn't figure out why my shopping habits had changed so dramatically and I had to ask myself 10 questions, it's going to be impossibly difficult for people to figure it out based on any data sheet. The conversation is where it's at, and that's where you're going to be able to find it. And Simon argues that leaders need to increase the amount of time and energy they provide to colleagues and their people in order to be able to understand what's going on. So, wanted to end with this quote, which I think pretty much sums up what I was trying to get across with you guys is that every day I show up really, really conscious that I know nothing, and I go home feeling like I've added value. But the days that I show up with a whole card catalog of information that I think I need to somehow feed into the problems that I'm facing, nothing seems to work. So ask more than tell, and that's my advice. I'm going to leave some room for some questions. Yeah?